All right, Embrace. Hey, how we doing today? Everybody okay? It's Labor Day weekend. Are we making it? Okay? Yeah, okay. It sounds like everybody's doing great. Hey, I'm Brian. Welcome. We're so glad you're here. I'm the campus pastor here. If you're here for the first time, you should know this. We, at Embrace Church, we are one church with 4 campuses. And so usually on a regular Sunday, the speaker up here, they would be speaking not just to you guys in the room, but to 3 other campuses. But not today. Today, it is just us. It is just us. All of our campuses, easy for me to say, are hearing their own message. They're hearing a message just for them, so it's just us. So here's the good thing. I feel so much freedom today because I don't have to figure out, okay, is the T campus going to understand my jokes? Is Sertoma, are they going to think I'm dressed relevant enough for them? And then our St. Croix campus up in Minnesota, I don't have to use the long O sound when I say boats and goats, just so they feel included. I don't know why I would talk about boats necessarily, but just so you know, I'm feeling very free. I'm very excited to be with you guys today. A special welcome, too, to our college students. Man, I know Augie and USF got going this week, so man, if you're back, we're glad you're here. Sioux Falls is a better place when school is in session. Thanks for being with us. Like I said before, we are in a series today, or a message today, where each campus is hearing something different, which is a good thing because even as a church that has different campuses, our campuses are different. Just like we're different from the church down the street, we're different here at 57th than we are from T. And that shouldn't surprise us. I don't think any church or organization, a business, a school, they all have their own distinct cultures, right? And they are made up, that culture is made up by the people that are there, whether it's employees or staff or students at the school. Here, our culture is really made up by you that attend and our volunteers. That's what makes Embrace what it is. And so we are different than even our Sertoma campus. So today, what I'm talking about is a specific message for specific people. I feel like God has given me this message to talk to us at 57th, to push us into the fall, into this year, to talk about something really specific. So I'm excited about that. And if you've been around for a while and you've heard me talk maybe once or twice, I always talk about my family. I've got a couple of teenage daughters. If you're a parent, you just know how fast that time goes. It feels like yesterday. It feels like yesterday for me that we were playing hide and seek with a 3- and 5-year-old in our house. Literally last week, we played hide and seek with a 15-year-old and a 13-year-old in our house. They still want to play hide and seek. It's amazing. But a couple years back, actually 10 years back, when our kids were really young, we had this great idea as a family to go on a road trip from Minneapolis, Minnesota, where we lived at the time, to Orlando, Florida. We thought, this is a great idea. We're going to drive 25 hours, mind you, because we didn't want to pay for the airfare, and we didn't want to pay for a hotel, so we were going to drive straight through. And so my spiritual gift is faith. So I had no problem just jumping in the car and being like, this is going to be great. Let's do it. My wife's spiritual gift is a firm grasp on reality. And so Andrea said, if we're going to do this, we need to put some mechanisms in place so that we don't end up in the evening news. So here's what Andrea did. Andrea put together just a brilliant rewards system for our kids. Every hour in the car, if they had behaved for that previous hour, they would receive a ticket. And as they accumulated tickets for their good behavior, they could then start handing in their tickets and redeeming rewards and prizes. 1 ticket would get them a piece of candy. 2 tickets would get them control of the radio, whatever we listen to. 3 tickets, and they could watch a movie. I kid you not. Not only did my kids not commandeer the van, it was the best 25 hours of our life. They were saying, yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. They've never said that since, nor have we ever taught them to say those things. It was remarkable. They were angels for 25 hours in the car. If you want Andrea Rock's keys to controlling children, $19.99, 3 easy payments to our PayPal, and they're all yours. Go nuts. But it really worked for us. Here's my question, though. What do you think would have happened if the tickets stopped getting handed out? Or worse yet, what do you think would have happened if the rewards stopped getting handed out? I will tell you what would have happened. Mutiny. Absolute mutiny. I would have been tied up on top of the van like Aunt Edna. It would have been brutal. But we made it through. We figured out a way. My wife figured out a way so that our kids would behave really, really well. for a certain period of time. But what happens when the rewards run out? I think for most of us, we're like my kids. I think in a lot of ways, Christians are like my kids, where we think, man, if I do these good things, I follow God doing these things, I go to church, I stay away from the big mistakes. If I don't do those, then God's going to keep handing out the rewards. And they're going to keep coming, and they're going to keep coming. But here's my question. What if you do everything right and your family falls apart? What if you've done nothing wrong, nothing, quote, wrong, you've stayed away from the big mistakes and your spouse has an affair? What if you've worked faithfully for a company for 20 years and they decide, oh, it's time for you to go? What then? How is it that we could do all these things right, but God would stop handing out the rewards? But God, I did all these things. How is it that you're repaying me like this now? That doesn't seem fair. What happens when the rewards run out? Here's the question that I want us to think about, 57th. Today, this is what I have for us. Here's the question. Is Jesus enough? Is Jesus enough for you? When the rewards run out, is Jesus enough? Because there will come a day when he needs to be enough. And if he's not enough today when things are good, I guarantee you, man, it's going to be really hard for you to think he's enough when things are tough. What would it look like for us at 57th if we actually lived in such a way that Jesus was enough? How would that change my own thought life? If I thought Jesus was enough, if I was actually content in who he was and what he could offer me, how would that change my home? How would that change my work and my school? So today we're going to look at words from Paul, who was a follower of Jesus. We're going to look at words from James, who was the earthly brother of Jesus. And we're going to look at words from Mark, who wrote the Gospel of Mark, because in these words, I think we see three reasons that Jesus should be enough for every one of us. And the first reason is this: Jesus needs nothing from you. Jesus needs nothing from you. Notice what Paul says in the book of Acts. Now, Paul is addressing a crowd here in Athens, Greece, and this is what Paul says. He is the God who made the world and everything in it. Since he is Lord of heaven and earth, he doesn't live in man-made temples, and human hands can't serve his needs, for he has no needs. He himself gives life and breath to everything, and he satisfies every need. Notice the key phrase. Don't miss the key phrase. He has no needs. Have you ever met somebody that doesn't have any needs? If you have, I would love to meet him, because that's a unicorn, man. Brian Regan is one of my favorite comedians of all time, and he does this really good bit on the airlines losing his luggage. And he talks about what a tough conversation that is to go in and talk to the people after they've lost your luggage and be like, hey, when are my bags going to show up? And he's talking to this guy, and the guy says, well, it'll be on the next plane, or it could be tomorrow. But in the meantime, take this. And he hands Brian a Ziploc-sized baggie, and on it, it says Essentials Kit. And on it, Brian, he makes this joke and just says, man, if these are the essentials, then I overpack. And he goes on to say, if it really were an essentials kit, if it really had everything I need, when I open up that essentials kit, it would have food, shelter, and love. Because we all need the essentials, right? And those are the essentials. At least at the very base, we need food, shelter, and love. But God needs nothing of that from us. He's fine by himself. He has everything he needs. He does not need our shelter. He does not need the things that we give him, which, again, I think that's different. I think we think differently. I think we think when we come to church, we're doing God a favor. Hey, God, I'm here today. I'm in. Check it out. I know you wanted me here. I know you needed me here. Well, here's the deal. God wants you here, but God doesn't need anything from us. It's the opposite. We're the ones with needs. We're the ones who can't function without somebody providing things for us. Even the most even the person who has everything for themselves, they still have basic needs. James says this. James was the earthly brother of Jesus. That would be tough, to be the earthly brother of Jesus. James says this, every good and perfect gift comes from above, coming down from the Father. He says everything good comes from God. And Jesus, as the Son of God, he also doesn't need anything from us. If all the good things come from God and Jesus is God, guess what Jesus has? Jesus has enough contentment. He has enough peace. He has all the things that we need. He has enough wisdom. He has enough forgiveness. He has enough love. And if Jesus has enough, then Jesus is enough. If Jesus has all the things that we need, if he has enough, then he is enough. Would we believe that today? Man, Jesus is enough because he actually doesn't need anything from us. If Jesus has enough, he is enough. The second reason that I think Jesus is enough is this. Jesus wants to be with you first. Jesus wants to be with you first. So for 30 years, Jesus lived on the earth before he ever went into ministry, meaning he didn't do any healings, he didn't do any teaching or preaching for 30 years. He was kind of in the background. And then when he turned 30, or around that time, he started going into public ministry. He started preaching in the synagogues, doing things like that. And so what's the first thing he did? It was actually he chose 12 disciples to go with him. And notice what Mark says. Mark, who wrote the gospel, said this, he appointed 12 that they might be with him and that he might send them out to preach. What comes first in this verse? To be with him or to be sent out? Well, the first thing that comes is to be with him. Now, if you're here today and you're checking out church, you're not really sure about God, you're not really sure, or somebody dragged you here against your will, we're glad that you're here. In many ways, Embrace was created for you. It's a church for you. But give me a moment, just a moment as I talk to those of us that call ourselves followers of Jesus. I want us to hear what author Chip Brogden says. Among Christians, I've discovered something. There is Jesus, and then there are all the things about Jesus that are not Jesus. Jesus himself occupies only a small portion of what is said and done in Christian circles. Most of what is said and done is merely about Jesus, but it is not Jesus. When he says Christian circles, he means church. He means small group. He means large group at church. Most of what is said and done in those circles, he says, is about Jesus, but it's not Jesus. So as Christians, what are some things that we do that are about Jesus or for Jesus, but aren't Jesus? I thought about this week, and I came up with a few pretty quickly, actually. The first one that I thought of was worship music, like worship songs. Like, I love worship songs. That song we sang right before I came up here, that's a new song today, and I needed to hear that song. I loved that song. When I'm working during the week, I will put headphones in, especially if I'm at a coffee shop, and I will listen to Christian music, Christian worship songs specifically, over and over and over on repeat. And sometimes I'll get connected to one particular song, and I will listen to that one song over and over and over through my workday. And this is the truth. If Godzilla came out of the sea and laid waste to Seattle, unless Chris Tomlin sings about it, I wouldn't know. Like, they'd just be like, what happened? They didn't tell me about that in the worship song. No, Brian, Seattle no longer exists. Godzilla took care of it. Oh, okay, good to know. I say that to let you know I love worship songs, but worship songs is not Jesus. Singing worship to Jesus or for Jesus or about Jesus is not Jesus. If we come to church every Sunday because we love the music and the way it makes us feel, that's not Jesus. It can be a way that we connect, absolutely. It can be a way that we show honor and praise to him, but that's not Jesus specifically. I think we can worship oftentimes more than we actually worship Jesus and God. Another thing I thought of was social justice, and hang with me here for a second. Feeding the poor, caring for the overlooked and the least of society, these are things Jesus told us to do as followers. He said, go do these things in my name. And so they are good things, and we should do them, absolutely. But we've got to remember that they are not Jesus. If I am going after these things and I'm caring for people and I'm loving people and I'm feeding the poor and I'm caring for the widow, I need to remember that I've got to be with Jesus, or I'm not going to be able to do that anymore for a while. My cup is going to run dry at some point. That is not Jesus. It's about Jesus. It can be for Jesus, but it is not Jesus. How about reading the Bible? Certainly reading the Bible equals Jesus, right? Well, for 200 years, the church exploded in growth after Jesus rose from the dead, and there was no Bible. The Bible didn't exist for 200 years, and in that time, the church grew like it has never grown before. I'm not saying don't read the Bible. I'm saying read the Bible, but make sure you're actually with Jesus. Don't check off the box and just say, okay, I did it, God. I did that today. If I do this for you, then that means I must be with you. Not necessarily. What things do we do for Jesus or about Jesus that are not Jesus? Posting Bible verses on Instagram. Maybe going on a mission trip. Those types of things are all good, but we got to remember they are not Jesus. Look what Brogdon goes on to write. You are called to be with Jesus. That is your calling. That is your primary thing, the highest ministry. Going forth to preach and do anything else is of secondary importance. We should be with Jesus, and after that, he might send us forth to preach. But before Jesus said, go into all the world, he said, be with me. Isn't it remarkable that Jesus, who doesn't need anything from us, says, be with me first. Be with me before you go do something for me. And man, I hope you hear this today. If you're not with Jesus today when things are good, tomorrow when things are falling apart, you're going to be so confused. You're not going to understand why. You're going to be like, God, I did all the right things. I thought this was a transaction. I thought this is how it worked. If I do this, then you do that. That's the deal. If you're not with Jesus today when it's fallen apart, it's going to be really, really hard. It's going to be really hard to walk through that. Jesus is enough. Make it a habit to be with him. All right, reason number 3 that Jesus should be enough. Only Jesus can give you what you need. All right, don't answer out loud on this one, but does anybody know what a keystone is? A keystone is the top part of an arch, of a stone arch. This keystone is the last piece that's put into an arch. And I just wanted to show this arch picture because I thought it was pretty. But that's keystone. It's the last piece to be put into an arch. So think of an arch bridge or arch architecture in buildings. The Roman Colosseum, there's many arches. Once the keystone is put in, then the arch can hold itself up, but before that it can't. It's not self-sustaining at that point. So the keystone is really a big part of the arch. I want you to think about that as we read these words from Paul next, and this is in his letter to the Colossians. Paul says this, everything was created through him and for him. He existed before anything else, and he holds all of creation together. So yes, Jesus who doesn't need anything from you, Jesus who wants to be with you. Here's what Paul claims about this Jesus, that actually the entire creation holds together because of him. And if that's the case, if Jesus holds together all of creation, man, who else should we look to provide our needs? Where else can we go that somebody can actually give us the essentials of life? Who has the power? Notice the last part of this verse again. He existed before anything, and he holds all of creation together. I don't know about you. I'm going with the one that holds creation together. I don't know about you, but I'm going to go with the one who died and then rose again. If he can defeat death, I'll bet he can give me what I need. Only Jesus can give you what you need. The interesting thing about keystones, if we look at these pictures again, the interesting thing about keystones, not only are they the most important part of the arch, they actually experience the least amount of stress. Once the keystone is put in, that one has the least amount of stress. 57th, would we know that Jesus is the keystone? You can give him anything, and it doesn't cause him stress. It doesn't give too much to him. You cannot give too much to him. He holds all things together, and if that is the case, man, why wouldn't we go to him? Why wouldn't we look to him to cover all of our needs? What if your marriage is falling apart? Do you hear Jesus saying, give that to me? I have enough. I am enough. Would you give that to me? It doesn't cause me stress. Yeah, but Brian, I just lost my job. Give that to Jesus. Do you think he can't help you make ends meet? All things hold together because of him. So back to the question, is Jesus enough? 57th. Is Jesus enough? A couple years back, Andrea, my wife, and I, we sat at a coffee shop with a couple, friends of ours who we'd known for years. Both Andrea and I had been in Bible studies with them. Separate Bible studies, a gal's one and a guy's one. Gone to church with them. Our kids had hung out together, and they had invited us to go out for coffee. And we were excited. We hadn't seen them for a while. And we knew that they had been going through some tough stuff, but we didn't know what was going on. And in that time, they admitted to us that my friend, he had had an affair. It had happened a year or two prior to, but they were going around and they were connecting with key friends of theirs to tell them the truth. And I can't tell you how hard that was. One, for them to tell us. Two, to just watch the hurt on their faces as they were talking about what they'd been walking through for this amount of time. And my friend was at this point when he goes, when we were in the middle of it, when I had just told my wife what had happened, I didn't know, we were in the middle of the crisis, and I didn't know what was coming next. And he said, Brian, a Christian mentor, a Christian friend came over to me in that moment, and he asked me 4 questions. And these were the questions. If tomorrow morning your wife is gone, if tomorrow the kids aren't in the house anymore, if tomorrow you lose your house, and if tomorrow your reputation is in tatters, he said, do you have it in you to push all your chips to the middle of the table and then say, I'm in for Jesus, he's enough? And my friend, who was really honest about this, said, Brian, at that moment, I couldn't say yes. I didn't know what was coming next. I'd gone to church my entire life, been in Bible studies, had led Bible studies, had led Sunday school, and all of it had been a show. I had performed so much, and now all of that thing was going to be laid to waste. People would know the decisions I had made, know the mistakes I had made. I didn't know if I could. I didn't know if I could push it all in and say, yeah, Jesus, you're enough. He said, Brian, it took me a year. It took me a year to manage through that question and figure that out. And I talked to him again this last week, just a couple days ago, and the place that they are in is remarkable. To see what God has done in healing and restoration. Has it been easy? No. Does it continue to be easy? Absolutely not. There are things that we do that will go with us our entire lives, and that's one of them. But God has been faithful to them only because Jesus is enough. If Jesus isn't enough, then I don't see that getting better. I don't see our relationships getting better. I gotta believe he is enough because I know that he has enough. He doesn't need anything from me. He wants to be with me even though he doesn't need anything. And he's the only place I can go for my own needs. So 57th, is he enough? That question for us this fall as a campus, that means everything. How you answer that defines where we go this fall. If Jesus isn't enough, then nothing changes. If Jesus isn't enough, live your life. Go to work tomorrow, drop your kids off of school, come back, enjoy the music next week. If he's not enough, nothing changes. If he is enough, what would you do to live like that? And what would you do to tell your neighbor, to tell your boss, to tell your coworker, to tell your mother-in-law? Maybe not your mother-in-law, that's a bad example. But what would you do so that people would know Jesus is enough? Remember, he holds all of creation together. If he holds all of creation together, He can handle what you're going through. You giving him what you're going through does not add stress to him. You cracking open the Bible and reading so that you know more of him is because he wants to be with you, not so that he sees you do something for him. He just wants to be with you. I don't have the most eloquent words. I don't have the best arguments. But man, if I did, this would be what I'd want to talk you into. Would God's Spirit lay it on all of our hearts to let us know that Jesus is enough? Let's pray. God, we love you. No matter what we're walking through today, God, my prayer would be that each person in this room would know that not only do you have enough, that you have everything that you need, that there's nothing that we can offer you. God, I pray that if we understand that you have enough, then that you are enough for us. So whatever we're walking through today, God, would you take it from us? Would you show us your love? Would you give us some of that contentment that you have enough of? Some of that wisdom that you have enough of? Some of that forgiveness that you have enough of? God, it's been a week, man. You know what a week it's been. For some of us, it's all we could do just to get out of bed and get here. God, would you meet us in this place? Would we know that you're enough? And as we leave here today, would we do everything in our power to let a hurting and broken generation know that you are enough? Amen.